The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the most impressive structure in known space. It floated at the exact center of civilized territory, a massive station shaped like a flower with 1,000 petals. Each petal held the embassy of a different species. The central dome, where the full council met, could seat representatives from over 400 worlds. Today was supposed to be ordinary. Trade disputes, border adjustments, the endless small arguments that kept the galaxy running. High Coordinator Zaleth, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms, reviewed the day's agenda with practiced boredom. She had held this position for 60 years. Nothing surprised her anymore. The door to the chamber opened and a human walked in. Zaleth paused. Humans rarely attended full council sessions. They were a quiet species, one of the youngest members of the galactic community. They had joined 200 years ago after discovering faster-than-light travel. Since then, they had done nothing remarkable. They paid their membership fees, they followed the rules, they voted on minor matters and abstained on major ones. Most council members forgot humans existed until they saw one. The human was a woman of middle years, with dark hair pulled back from her face and eyes that seemed unusually still. She wore the simple gray uniform that human diplomats preferred. No decorations, no symbols of rank, just gray fabric and a small pin showing Earth, their homeworld. "I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez," she said. Her voice carried easily through the chamber. "I request emergency floor time." Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Emergency floor time was reserved for matters of critical importance. Wars, plagues, extinction-level events. What could humans possibly have to say that warranted such urgency? Zaleth raised one of her 4 hands for silence. "Ambassador Vasquez, this is highly unusual. Your species has never requested emergency floor time in 2 centuries of membership." "That is correct, High Coordinator. You understand that emergency requests require justification? You must demonstrate immediate threat to galactic stability." Elena Vasquez nodded slowly. "I understand. 3 days ago, an unidentified fleet entered the New Valencia system. New Valencia was a human colony world. Population 2.3 million. The fleet destroyed all orbital infrastructure, then bombarded the planet's surface. There were no survivors." The chamber fell absolutely silent. Zaleth felt something cold move through her chest. She had seen many things in 60 years. Wars between species, genocides, atrocities that still haunted her sleep. But something about the way this human spoke made her deeply uneasy. There was no anger in Ambassador Vasquez's voice, no grief, no desperation. She spoke as if she were reading a weather report. "You may have the floor," Zaleth said. Elena walked to the central platform. Above her, a holographic display activated, showing sensor data and images. The delegates saw a peaceful world of blue oceans and green continents. Then they saw fire, ships in orbit, weapons firing, cities burning, and finally nothing but ash and glass where life had been. "We recovered debris from the attacking fleet," Elena continued. "Weapon signatures, engine residue, communication fragments. Our analysis is complete." She paused, and for the first time something flickered in her eyes. The weapons were Krethkai in origin. The ships were Krethkai in design. The attack was carried out by forces of the Krethkai Dominion. The Krethkai delegation erupted. There were 12 of them, massive reptilian beings with armored scales and jaws filled with teeth. Their species had been council members for 3,000 years. They controlled 70 star systems and maintained one of the largest military fleets in the galaxy. They were used to respect. They were not used to accusations. "Lies!" roared Ambassador Torvax, the leader of the Krethkai delegation. He rose to his full height, nearly 3 meters of scaled muscle. "Fabrication! Humans are pathetic creatures who could not recognize Krethkai technology if it landed in their primitive nests." Elena did not react to his outburst. She simply uploaded more data to the display. Weapons analysis, metallurgical reports, recovered transmissions in the Krethkai military language. "The evidence is available for independent verification," she said. "We welcome any species that wishes to examine our findings. We have nothing to hide." Torvax slammed his massive fist on his delegation's table. "This is an insult to the Krethkai Dominion. We demand immediate censure of the human delegation. We demand an apology. Other delegates began speaking over each other. Some demanded order. Others shouted questions. The Velith ambassador, a small being with too many eyes, called for an emergency investigation. The Marathi delegation suggested that perhaps the humans had misidentified the attackers. Through it all, Elena Vasquez stood perfectly still. Zalith called for order, and slowly the chamber quieted. She looked at the human ambassador with growing unease. There was something wrong here, something she could not identify. In her experience, species that suffered such attacks came to the council in fury or in tears. They demanded revenge. They begged for help. They did something. This human did nothing. She simply stood there, waiting. Ambassador Vasquez, Zayla said carefully, what does humanity request from this council? Military assistance? Sanctions against the Krethkai? An investigation committee? Elena turned to face the High Coordinator. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she spoke, and her words were very soft. We request nothing. The chamber went silent again. We did not come here to ask for help, Elena continued. We did not come here to beg for justice from a council that has never given justice to the weak. We came here for one reason only. She turned to face the Krethkai delegation directly. Ambassador Torvax glared at her with obvious contempt. She was small. Her species was small. They had no fleet worth mentioning. They had no military power. They were prey animals who had somehow stumbled into space. You attacked our home, Elena said. We wanted you to know that we know. Torvax laughed. It was a harsh, brutal sound. And what will you do, little human? Write us a strongly worded letter? Cry to the council for protection? Your species is nothing. You have always been nothing. Perhaps this will teach you to remember your place in the galaxy. Elena did not respond to his words. She simply looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she turned and walked toward the chamber doors. Ambassador Vasquez, Zalith called out. Where are you going? We must discuss this matter further. Elena paused at the door. She looked back at the assembled delegates of 400 species. Some looked sympathetic, some looked afraid, some looked bored, already dismissing this as a minor incident between a powerful species and a weak one. There is nothing to discuss, Elena said. We have delivered our message. What happens next is not a matter for debate. She left. The doors closed behind her. The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted at each other. The Krethkai roared denials and threats. The Velith demanded an immediate investigation. The Marathi suggested forming a committee to study the situation. Zalith sat in her elevated chair and watched the chaos with growing dread. In 60 years, she had never seen anything quite like this. The human ambassador had not asked for help. She had not made demands. She had not threatened or pleaded or negotiated. She had simply delivered information and left. Hours passed. The council argued in circles. The Krethkai continued to deny involvement, though their denials grew less certain as more delegates examined the human evidence. The weapon signatures were unmistakably Krethkai. The engine residue matched Krethkai military vessels. The communication fragments, when translated, contained Krethkai military codes. By evening, a disturbing report reached the council floor. Human space had gone dark. All communications from human systems had ceased. All human ships had vanished from known travel lanes. Human embassies on other worlds had closed their doors without explanation. They are hiding, Torvax declared with satisfaction. They know what they have done. They have falsely accused the Krethkai Dominion, and now they flee in shame. When they emerge, we will demand reparations for this insult. But Zalith was not so sure. She had watched the human ambassador's face very carefully. She had seen no fear there, no desperation, no shame. She had seen patience, the terrible, cold patience of someone who has waited a very long time for something. That night, Zalith accessed the council archives and began reading everything she could find about humanity. It was not much. Humans had attracted little attention in 200 years. They were considered a minor species, unremarkable in every way. But as she read, she noticed something strange. Small things that did not quite fit. Human exploration surveys that seemed oddly incomplete. Trade routes that avoided certain systems for unexplained reasons. military assessments that had never been verified because humans always declined to participate in joint exercises. She read until dawn, and when morning came, she felt a fear she could not explain. Something was coming, something the galaxy had not prepared for, and she suspected that the Krethkai had just made a terrible mistake. 200 years earlier, the first human ship to travel faster than light emerged into a universe far more crowded than anyone had expected. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UNS Discovery and stared at the view screen. A massive station hung in space before them, surrounded by thousands of ships of every shape and size. Within minutes of their arrival, they had been hailed in a dozen languages. Within hours, they had been escorted to a diplomatic reception area and introduced to representatives of the Galactic Council. The galaxy, it turned out, was old. Civilizations had risen and fallen for millions of years before humans learned to make fire. The current order had existed for 100,000 years, a complex web of alliances, trade agreements, and power structures that humans could barely comprehend. And at the center of it all was a simple truth: the strong ruled and the weak obeyed. Sarah Chen spent 3 months learning how the galaxy worked. She watched powerful species bully smaller ones. She saw how junior members of the council were exploited for resources and labor. She observed the casual cruelty with which elder races treated those they considered beneath them. She also noticed something else. The powerful species were not particularly clever. They had achieved their positions through age and accumulated resources, not through innovation or adaptability. They had stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped changing. When she returned to Earth, she delivered her report to the United Nations General Assembly. It took 6 hours. When she finished, there was a long silence. "They will try to exploit us," said the Secretary General. "They will see us as resources to be used." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "What do you recommend?" Sarah Chen thought for a long moment before answering. "We play their game. We become what they expect us to be. Small, quiet, unremarkable. And while they ignore us, we prepare." "Prepare for what?" "For the day when someone decides we are too small to matter." The decision was made in secret. Humanity would join the galactic community as a minor species. They would follow the rules. They would avoid conflict. They would give no one any reason to look at them too closely. And in the darkness between stars, they would build. The present day. The council chamber was in chaos for the third consecutive day. High Coordinator Zalith had barely slept since the human ambassador's departure. Reports arrived every hour, each more confusing than the last. Human space remained completely dark. No communications in or out. No ships on known travel routes. It was as if an entire species had simply vanished. The Krethkai delegation grew more aggressive with each passing day. Ambassador Torvax strutted through the corridors, loudly proclaiming human cowardice. He gave interviews to galactic media outlets, mocking the pathetic creatures who had dared accuse his noble species of wrongdoing. But not everyone was so confident. The Velith, a species known for their intelligence networks, had attempted to send scouts into human space. None had returned. Their sensors showed no battles, no destroyed ships. The scouts had simply entered human territory and disappeared. The Marathi, who specialized in economic analysis, had noticed something troubling. For 2 centuries, humans had imported vast quantities of raw materials, metals, rare elements, industrial compounds. The volume far exceeded what their visible infrastructure could possibly need. Where had it all gone? Zalith summoned the Krethkai ambassador to her private chambers. Torvax arrived with obvious reluctance, clearly viewing the meeting as beneath his dignity. "Ambassador," Zalith began, "I must ask you directly. Did the Krethkai Dominion order the attack on New Valencia?" Torvax's scales rippled with irritation. "The humans are lying. They are trying to embarrass us before the council. When they emerge from hiding, we will crush them for this insult. The evidence suggests otherwise. Multiple independent analysts have confirmed that the weapon signatures are genuine. Then the humans somehow obtained Krethkai weapons and attacked themselves. It would not surprise me. They are strange creatures, capable of any deception." Zalith studied the massive reptilian carefully. She had dealt with the Krethkai for decades. They were not subtle beings. They valued strength and directness. They considered deception a weakness. Torvax was lying, and he was not good at it. If the Krethkai did attack New Valencia, she said slowly, why would you do such a thing? Humans have given you no offense. They have never opposed Krethkai interests. Torvax was silent for a long moment. Then he leaned forward, and his voice dropped to a growl. They voted against us in the Meridian Trade Agreement, a minor matter, but principle demanded response. They needed to be reminded of their place. We expected them to come crying to the council, to beg for protection, as weak species always do. Then we would have generously offered to forgive their insult in exchange for favorable trade terms. Zaelith felt cold horror spreading through her chest. You killed 2.3 million beings over a trade vote? They were humans, Torvax said dismissively. They have no fleet, no military strength. They cannot retaliate, and now they know the cost of opposing Krethkai interests. When they emerge from hiding, they will be far more cooperative. And if they do not emerge? What if they are not hiding? Torvax laughed. What else could they be doing? They have 50 patrol vessels at most. Our intelligence is quite clear on this point. Humans are prey animals who somehow learn to operate starships. They have no capacity for true warfare. 60 years earlier, a classified military facility on the dark side of Earth's moon. Admiral James O. Concuil stood before a holographic display showing a section of space that did not officially exist. 12 star systems, carefully removed from all public surveys, hidden in the gaps between known territories. Project Silent Fortress has reached Phase 3, his aide reported. We now have shipyard capacity sufficient to construct 500 capital ships per year. At current rates, we will reach full fleet strength in approximately 60 years. Okonkwo nodded slowly. He was 57 years old. He would not live to see the fleet completed. Neither would his children. Perhaps his grandchildren would be the ones to command these ships if the need ever arose. What about the technology programs, he asked. Progressing on schedule. Our scientists have successfully analyzed weapon systems from 14 species. We have developed countermeasures for all of them. The new shield generators should render our ships effectively immune to standard Krethkai weaponry. And the training programs? Every human military officer spends 1 year in deep cover, learning to fight against each major species. We have simulated over 10,000 battle scenarios. When the time comes, our commanders will know their opponents better than those opponents know themselves. Okonkwo was silent for a long moment. He looked at the holographic display, at the hidden shipyards where humanity's future was being forged in secret. I hope we never need any of this, he said quietly. I hope my grandchildren live in a galaxy where this fleet stays hidden forever. Do you believe that will happen, Admiral? No, Okonkwo admitted. I have studied the other species. I know how they think. Eventually, one of them will decide that humans are too weak to matter. They will attack us, expecting easy victory. And then we will show them what humanity has been doing for 200 years. The present day, the 5th day since the human ambassador's departure. Something was happening in human space. The Velith Intelligence Network had managed to place a sensor drone at the edge of human territory. What it detected made no sense. Massive energy signatures were emerging from systems that had been classified as empty. Thousands of contacts were moving through space in perfect formation. When the data reached the council, there was stunned silence. That cannot be correct, Torvax said, staring at the sensor readings. You are showing me a fleet of 3,000 warships. Humans do not have 3,000 warships. They do not have 300. The readings are confirmed, the Velith representative replied. Multiple verification passes. The fleet is real. Where did it come from? No one had an answer. Zaelith watched the display with growing dread. The human fleet was moving, not toward Krethkai space, not yet. It was assembling at a point just inside human territory, waiting. She thought about Ambassador Vasquez's face, that terrible patience, those words that now seemed to echo through the chamber. You attacked our home. We wanted you to know that we know. Not a plea, not a threat, a statement of fact. And now 3,000 warships were waiting for something. Zaelith looked at Torvax, who was still staring at the sensor data with disbelief. He had expected humans to hide. He had expected them to beg. He had expected them to be what he needed them to be, prey. He had been very, very wrong. Ambassador Torvax, Zayla said quietly, I believe humanity is waiting for something. I believe they are waiting for you to make a choice. What choice? Torvax demanded. The choice between justice and war. Torvax's scales darkened with fury. The Krethkai do not bow to prey animals. If they want war, they will have it. Our fleet will crush them. He stormed out of the chamber, already calling for his military commanders. Zalith watched him go. She had lived a long time. She had seen many conflicts. She knew what was coming, and she knew with terrible certainty that the Krethkai had no idea what they had awakened. Captain Marcus Chen had waited his entire life for this moment. He had trained for it. He had dreamed about it. He had prayed it would never come. Now he stood on the bridge of the HSS Retribution, one of 3,000 warships emerging from the shadows of human space. Around him, his crew worked in focused silence. They had practiced this scenario thousands of times. Every movement was precise. Every command was anticipated before it was given. The fleet assembled in the void between stars, far from any planet or station. From a distance, it would have looked like a cloud of metal and light, stretching across thousands of kilometers. Each ship held its position with perfect accuracy. Each captain waited for the order that would send them to war. Marcus looked at the tactical display. The Krethkai border was 6 hours away at standard speed. Beyond it lay the enemy's territory, defended by a fleet of 1,200 warships. The Krethkai had been the dominant military power in this sector of the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had never lost a major engagement. They had never fought humans. Captain, his communications officer said, incoming transmission from command. Fleet-wide broadcast. On screen. The face of President Adama Concuil appeared on the main display. She was in her 60s with gray hair and calm eyes. Her grandfather had helped design the first hidden shipyards. Her father had commanded the first completed warship. She had grown up knowing that this day might come. Officers and crew of the Human Defense Force, she began. 3 days ago, the Krethkai Dominion murdered 2.3 million of our people. They did this because they believed we were weak. They believed we could not respond. They believed we were prey. She paused, and something hard entered her voice. They were wrong. For 200 years we have watched. We have learned. We have prepared. We did not want this war. We hoped it would never come. But our ancestors understood a truth that the galaxy has forgotten. Peace is not given to the weak. Peace is earned by those strong enough to protect it. Marcus felt something stir in his chest. Around him, his crew stood a little straighter. Today, we will offer the Krethkai a choice, the president continued. They can surrender those responsible for the attack on New Valencia. They can pay reparations to the families of the dead. They can accept independent monitoring of their military operations, or they can face the consequences of their actions. We do not seek conquest. We do not want their territory or their wealth. We want justice for our dead and assurance that this will never happen again. That is all we ask. That is all we have ever asked. If they refuse, we will show them what humanity has become. Not because we want war, but because we will not allow our children to live in fear of those who see them as prey. The transmission ended. The fleet was silent for a long moment. Then Admiral Sarah Chen, great-granddaughter of the first human to travel faster than light, gave the order. All ships engage engines. Course, Krethkai border, formation, Hammer of Dawn. 3,000 ships moved as one. The HSS Retribution had taken 12 years to build. It was not the largest ship in the human fleet, but it was among the most advanced. Its hull was made of materials the galaxy had never seen, developed in secret laboratories over the course of a century. Its weapons could penetrate any known shield technology. Its engines could execute maneuvers that would tear conventional ships apart. Marcus walked through the ship as it traveled toward the border. He spoke with his crew, checking their readiness, answering their questions. Many of them were young, born in the hidden shipyards, raised knowing only the secret strength of humanity. They had trained their entire lives for combat they might never see. Now they would see it. In the mess hall, he found a group of junior officers eating a quiet meal. They stood when he entered, but he waved them back to their seats. "Captain," one of them said, a young woman named Lieutenant Park. "May I ask a question?" "Of course." The Krethkai killed 2.3 million people. Why are we offering them a choice at all? Why not just attack? Marcus was quiet for a moment. It was a fair question. He had asked it himself years ago when he first learned about the fleet's existence. Because that is not who we are, he said finally. The Krethkai killed our people because they saw us as prey, as lesser beings, as things to be destroyed without consequence. If we respond by killing them without mercy, we become what they believe us to be. We become just another species in a galaxy where the strong destroy the weak. But they murdered millions of civilians. Yes, and we will never forget that. But revenge is not justice. Revenge is just more death. We built this fleet to protect our people, not to destroy others. We give them the choice because that choice defines who we are. Lieutenant Park nodded slowly. And if they refuse, then we will defeat them. We will show them that we are not weak. We will demonstrate that attacking humans has consequences, but we will not slaughter them. We will not bomb their worlds. We will not become the monsters they expected us to be. He looked around at the young faces watching him. These were children of the secret fleet, raised in hidden shipyards, trained for a war they hoped would never come. They deserved to understand what they were fighting for. Humanity has always been capable of terrible violence, Marcus said. Our history is full of wars and atrocities, but we have also always been capable of something else. Mercy, compassion, the choice to build instead of destroy. That is what sets us apart. That is what we are fighting to prove. 6 hours later, the human fleet reached the Krethkai border. They found the enemy waiting for them. 4,200 Krethkai warships, the pride of the Dominion's military, arranged in a defensive formation. They had brought every available vessel, stripping their other borders of protection. They intended to crush the human fleet in a single overwhelming engagement. Ambassador Vasquez's face appeared on the communications channel. She was aboard a diplomatic vessel at the rear of the human formation. Krethkai Dominion, she said, her voice carried to every ship in both fleets. This is your final opportunity. Surrender the commanders who ordered the attack on New Valencia. Pay reparations to the families of the 2.3 million dead. Accept independent monitoring of your military operations. Do this, and there will be no further conflict. The response came from Admiral Torvax himself. He was aboard the Krethkai flagship, a massive vessel bristling with weapons. Humans, he growled, you have built an impressive fleet. We did not expect this, but numbers alone do not win wars. The Krethkai have been warriors for 3,000 years. We have fought and defeated 100 species. Your hidden ships will become your hidden graves. You have constructed weapons in secret. You have deceived the galaxy. You have no honor. When we destroy your fleet, we will finish what we started at New Valencia. Every human world will burn. Your species will be remembered only as a cautionary tale about prey animals who forgot their place. Elena Vasquez was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was very quiet. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Admiral Chen, you may proceed. Sarah Chen, aboard the command ship at the center of the human formation, gave the order. All ships, weapons free. Disable the enemy fleet. Minimal casualties. Let them live long enough to understand what they face. 3,000 ships moved forward. Marcus felt the retribution shudder as its engines accelerated to combat speed. Around him, his crew worked with the calm efficiency of long practice. Targeting systems locked onto enemy vessels. Weapons charged with energies that the Krethkai had never encountered. The first Krethkai missiles launched. Hundreds of warheads streaked toward the human fleet. They detonated harmlessly against shields that did not exist in any galactic database. The Krethkai weapons, designed to penetrate every known defensive system, splashed against barriers they could not understand. The human fleet did not slow down. Return fire, Marcus ordered. Target their weapon systems first, then engines. Leave their life support intact. The first human weapons fired. The Krethkai had never seen anything like them. Beams of energy that simply ignored shields. Missiles that changed course faster than any computer could track. Weapons that seemed to know where enemy ships would be before they moved. The battle had begun, and it was already over. The Krethkai just did not know it yet. The battle lasted 4 hours. It felt like 4 centuries. Marcus Chen watched the tactical display as the impossible unfolded before him. The Krethkai fleet, 100 warships crewed by the finest warriors of a 3,000-year military tradition, was being systematically dismantled. Human weapons tore through Krethkai's shields as if they did not exist. Human ships moved in formations so precise that they seemed to share a single mind. Human commanders anticipated every Krethkai tactic, countered every strategy, exploited every weakness. Because they had studied the Krethkai for 200 years. They had analyzed every battle the Dominion had ever fought. They had simulated this exact engagement 10,000 times. The Krethkai were fighting an enemy that knew them better than they knew themselves. Target disabled, the weapons officer reported as another Krethkai cruiser went dark. Engines destroyed, weapons offline, life support intact. Marcus nodded. Move to the next target. This was the part that confused the Krethkai most. Human ships were not trying to kill them. The devastating weapons that sliced through their shields were aimed with surgical precision at engines and weapon systems. Ships that should have been destroyed were instead left drifting, helpless but alive. Aboard the Krethkai flagship, Admiral Torvax raged at his commanders. Why are we losing? How is this possible? No one had an answer. The humans should not have weapons this advanced. They should not have tactics this sophisticated. They should not exist as they clearly existed. Admiral, a sensor officer reported, his voice shaking, we have lost 60% of our fleet. Most are disabled, not destroyed. The humans are deliberately leaving our crews alive. Why? Torvax demanded. What game are they playing? Unknown, Admiral, but if this continues, we will have no functional ships within 2 hours. Torvax stared at the tactical display. 2 centuries of assumptions were crumbling before his eyes. The prey animals, the weak species, the minor members of the galactic community who could be bullied without consequence. They had built a fleet that could destroy the Krethkai Dominion. And instead of using that fleet for slaughter, they were systematically disabling his ships while keeping his crews alive. It made no sense. It followed no pattern he recognized. What did they want? Aboard the HSS Retribution, Marcus received a priority communication from Admiral Chen. Captain, the enemy flagship is attempting to retreat, intercept and disable. Understood, Admiral. The Retribution accelerated, its engines pushing the ship to speeds the Krethkai could not match. Within minutes, they had closed the distance to Torvax's flagship. Lock weapons on their engines, Marcus ordered. Precision strike only. I want that ship dead in space, not dead. The Retribution's main weapons fired. 3 precise beams of energy pierced the flagship's shields and destroyed its engine array. The massive vessel shuddered and went dark except for emergency lighting. Target disabled. They are venting atmosphere on decks 7 through 12, but life support remains functional on the other sections. Marcus nodded. Open a communication channel to their bridge. The view screen flickered, and Admiral Torvax's face appeared. The Krethkai commander looked stunned. His scales had gone pale. His eyes were wide with something Marcus had never expected to see in a Krethkai warrior. Fear. Admiral Torvax, Marcus said calmly, your fleet is disabled. You have no functional weapons. You cannot retreat. This battle is over. Torvax struggled to compose himself. Then finish it, human. Destroy us. That is what warriors do. No, Marcus said. That is what the Krethkai do. We are not Krethkai. He leaned forward slightly. You killed 2.3 million of our people. Children, families, innocent civilians who had never harmed you. You did this because you believed we were prey. You believed there would be no consequence. You were wrong, but we will not respond to your atrocity with atrocity. We will not bomb your worlds as you bombed ours. We will not murder your civilians as you murdered ours. That is not who we are. Torvax stared at him with confusion. Then what do you want? Justice. Only justice. Surrender the commanders who ordered the attack on New Valencia. Allow them to stand trial for their crimes. Pay reparations to the families of the dead. Accept independent monitoring to ensure this never happens again. Do this, and we will tow your fleet back to your territory. We will repair the ships we have disabled. We will return your crews to their families. That is impossible, Torvax said. I ordered the attack. Do you expect me to surrender myself? Yes. The Krethkai admiral was silent for a long moment. Around him, his bridge crew watched with expressions of shock. They had expected to die. They had expected the humans to show the same brutality the Krethkai would have shown. This offer of mercy made no sense to them. Why? Torvax finally asked. You could destroy us. You could conquer our territory. You could take everything we have. Why offer us terms? Marcus thought of Lieutenant Park's question aboard the Retribution. Why not just attack? Why offer a choice at all? Because we did not build this fleet to destroy, he said. We built it to protect. We built it hoping we would never have to use it. We built it so that our children could live without fear. You attacked our home. You murdered our people. We will never forget that. But we will not become you. We will not prove that you were right about us. We are not prey, Admiral. But we are not predators either. We are something you have never encountered before. We are humans, and we would rather show you a better way than simply destroy you. The Galactic Council watched the battle unfold through long-range sensors. They saw the impossible. 1-200 Krethkai warships disabled in 4 hours by a fleet that should not have existed. They saw something even more impossible, that fleet offering terms of surrender instead of finishing what it had started. High Coordinator Zaleth sat in her chambers, staring at the reports. The human fleet had suffered 12 losses, 12 ships out of 3,000. The Krethkai had lost nothing because the humans had chosen not to kill them. They could have destroyed the entire Dominion, the Veleth ambassador said quietly. They have the power. Why did they stop? Because they are human, Zaleth replied. She had spent the last 5 days reading everything she could find about humanity. Their history, their wars, their atrocities, their triumphs. She had found a species capable of tremendous cruelty, yes, but also a species capable of something the galaxy had forgotten. Mercy, forgiveness, the choice to build instead of destroy. They have been watching us for 200 years, she said. They saw how we treat the weak. They saw the cycles of conquest and exploitation, and they decided to become something different. They could have conquered half the galaxy with that fleet, yes, and instead, they offered to repair the ships they disabled. They offered to return the crews to their families. They asked only for justice and assurance. The Veleth ambassador considered this. What happens now? Now the galaxy must decide what to make of humanity. They have revealed themselves. They cannot go back to being invisible. Every species will know that humans possess military power beyond anything we imagine. Will the Krethkai accept their terms? Zaleth looked at the sensor data. The human fleet surrounded the disabled Krethkai vessels. Thousands of warships waiting patiently for an answer. I do not know, she said, but I believe that if they refuse, the humans will not destroy them. They will simply wait. They have been waiting for 200 years. They are very good at patience. And eventually the Krethkai will understand that they have a choice between justice and extinction, between admitting their crime and losing everything. She turned to face the Veleth ambassador directly. The humans have shown us something today. Not just their fleet, not just their weapons. They have shown us that power does not have to mean cruelty, that strength does not have to mean conquest, that there is another way to exist in this galaxy. The question is whether we are wise enough to learn from their example. The Krethkai held out for 3 days. Their fleet drifted in space, disabled but alive. Human ships surrounded them, waiting with the patience of a species that had waited 200 years for this moment. Food and medical supplies were delivered to the crippled vessels. Damaged life support systems were repaired. The humans treated their defeated enemy with a care that made no sense to anyone who knew how the galaxy worked. On the Krethkai homeworld, the news spread slowly. At first, the military commanders tried to hide the truth. They spoke of a temporary setback, a strategic withdrawal, a need for reinforcement. But the truth could not be hidden forever. Their fleet was gone, not destroyed, but helpless, and the humans were offering terms. The people of the Dominion had never faced such a situation. For 3,000 years, they had been predators. They had conquered. They had bullied. They had never been defeated so completely that an enemy could dictate terms. Admiral Torvax, still aboard his disabled flagship, refused to surrender. He would not shame himself by accepting human mercy. He would rather die than admit that prey animals had defeated him. But Torvax was not the only voice in the Dominion. A faction of younger leaders had long opposed the old ways. They believed that constant aggression was destroying the Krethkai from within, that their culture of violence was unsustainable. They had been silenced for generations by the military elite. Now that elite had been humiliated by a species they called prey animals. The revolution was bloodless. The younger faction moved quickly, with the support of a population that had watched their invincible fleet disabled in 4 hours. Torvax and his commanders were removed from power. A new government was formed, and on the 7th day after the battle, the new Krethkai leadership accepted the human terms. The trial was held at a neutral location, an independent station in the space between territories. Judges from 12 species presided. The evidence was overwhelming. Admiral Torvax and 6 other commanders were convicted of ordering the unprovoked attack on New Valencia. The sentence was not death. Humanity had specifically requested that no executions take place. Instead, the convicted commanders would spend the rest of their lives on a prison world, surrounded by recordings of the 2.3 million beings they had murdered. Every day they would see the faces. Every day they would hear the names. Some said this was crueler than death. Others said it was justice. The reparations were paid. The Dominion opened its military operations to independent monitors. The conditions of the surrender were met in full. And then something unexpected happened. The human fleet, instead of returning home, remained at the border. Ambassador Elena Vasquez requested a meeting with the new Krethkai leadership. "We have one more offer," she said. "It is not a demand. You have met all our conditions, but we believe there is an opportunity here." The Krethkai leaders listened warily. "We built our fleet in secret because we knew the galaxy was dangerous. We knew that eventually someone would attack us. We were right. But we do not want to live in a galaxy where we must hide in the shadows, preparing for the next war. We propose a mutual defense pact. Any species that joins agrees to protect all other members against unprovoked aggression. Any species that joins gains access to human military technology." The Krethkai leaders stared at her in disbelief. "You would share your weapons with us, after what we did?" "Yes, because we do not want to be the only strong species in this sector. We want to build something that has never existed in this galaxy, a true alliance of equals, dedicated to protecting each other instead of preying on each other. You destroyed our fleet. You could have destroyed our worlds. Instead, you offer us partnership?" Elena Vasquez met their eyes without flinching. "We destroyed nothing. We disabled your fleet and returned it. We treated your wounded and fed your hungry. We did everything we could to show you that we are not your enemy. You are the descendants of warriors. We respect that. But we believe that true strength is not measured by how many enemies you can destroy. It is measured by how many friends you can build. The choice is yours. We will not force you. But we hope you will see what we see, a galaxy where species protect each other instead of preying on each other. A future where children do not have to fear the strong." 6 months later, the Galactic Council convened in special session. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the assembly. Behind her, a delegation from 13 species waited in silence. The Krethkai were there, represented by their new leadership. The Velith were there, their many eyes watching with keen intelligence. The Marathi were there, already calculating the economic implications. 12 other species had joined what humans called the Compact of Free Worlds. "High Coordinator," Elena said, "we come before this council not to make demands, but to extend an invitation. The Compact of Free Worlds is open to any species that wishes to join. The only requirement is a commitment to mutual defense and mutual respect." Zalith looked at the delegation. 6 months ago, she had watched a human ambassador deliver news of an atrocity with terrible calm. She had wondered what was coming. Now she knew. "What exactly does membership in this compact require?" she asked. "A promise to defend any member that faces unprovoked aggression, a commitment to peaceful resolution of disputes, a willingness to share technology and resources for mutual benefit, and respect for the rights of all sentient beings, regardless of their species or their strength." Many will see this as a challenge to the Council's authority. It is not meant that way. The Council has maintained galactic order for 100,000 years. We respect that. But we believe there is room for something more, something better. Elena paused, looking around the massive chamber at representatives of 400 species. For 2 centuries, humanity watched this galaxy. We saw the strong prey on the weak. We saw junior members exploited and ignored. We saw a system that rewarded cruelty and punished compassion. We could have tried to become the new predator at the top of the food chain. We had the power. We had the technology. We could have conquered half the galaxy before anyone could stop us. Instead, we chose a different path. We chose to show that strength and mercy can coexist. We chose to prove that power does not have to mean cruelty. The compact of free worlds is not perfect. We are still learning. But we offer something that this galaxy has not seen in a very long time. Hope. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then slowly delegates began to stand. The Velith, the Morathi, species after species rising to their feet, signaling their interest in this strange new idea. Not all of them, not even most of them. The galaxy was old and change came slowly. Many species would watch and wait, suspicious of human motives, uncertain of human intentions. But enough. Enough to begin. 1 year after the attack on New Valencia, a memorial was dedicated on the planet's surface. The world was still scarred. The cities were still ruins. The atmosphere still carried traces of ash. But life was returning. Plants were growing in the rubble. Animals were emerging from hiding, and people were coming back. President Adama Okonkwo stood before the memorial, a simple wall of black stone bearing 2.3 million names. Around her stood representatives from 30 species, including the new Krethkai ambassador. Admiral Marcus Chen watched from orbit. The Retribution floated above the rebuilding planet, part of a fleet that would remain there until the world was safe again. Other ships from other species accompanied them, members of the Compact lending their strength to the protection of this wounded world. "We come here today to remember," President Okonkwo said, "to remember those we lost, to remember what was taken from us, to remember the cost of hatred and the price of cruelty. But we also come here to look forward, to see what is being built among the ruins. Not just buildings and cities, something larger, something better." When the Krethkai attacked this world, they expected us to cower. They expected us to prove that we were what they believed us to be. Prey animals, weak creatures, lesser beings. Instead, we showed them something they had never seen. A species that could have destroyed them, but chose not to. A species that answered atrocity with justice, not revenge. A species that offered partnership to those who had wronged them. We did not do this because we are weak. We did this because we are human. Because we believe that the strong have a responsibility to protect the weak. Because we know that true victory is not destroying your enemies, but turning them into friends. She turned to face the Krethkai ambassador, who stood with head bowed. "Ambassador Kethavar, your people killed 2.3 million of ours. We will never forget that. But we forgive you, not because you deserve forgiveness, but because we cannot build a better future while chained to the hatred of the past. Welcome to the Compact of Free Worlds. We hope your grandchildren and ours will stand here together, not to remember war, but to celebrate peace." In the crowd below, children played. Human children and Krethkai children and Velith children and Morathi children and children of a dozen other species, running through the ruins of New Valencia, building castles from the rubble, laughing in the sunlight. Marcus Chen watched them and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Not hope that the galaxy would suddenly become peaceful. Not hope that there would be no more wars. But hope that humanity had shown another way. Hope that the example they had set would spread. Hope that their children would live in a better galaxy than their parents had. The fleet remained. It would always remain. Humanity would never again be weak enough to be victimized without consequence. But the hope was that the fleet would never need to fire another shot. The hope was that the Compact would grow. That species would learn to protect each other instead of prey on each other. That the long cycles of conquest and exploitation would finally end. It was a fragile hope. The galaxy was old and old habits died hard. There would be setbacks and failures in species that refused to learn. But it was a hope worth fighting for. And humanity had proven they were very good at patient, determined fighting for what they believed in. The memorial service ended. The representatives departed. The children continued to play. And above them, the ships of the compact kept watch, waiting for a future that had finally begun to seem possible. A future where attacking someone's home would never again go unanswered. A future where strength and mercy walked together. A future that humans had been building, in secret and in silence, for 200 years. It had finally arrived.